March 1st, Eclipse OpenJ9 community call. As always, please add your name and affiliation to the list of attendees, just so we have some idea of who's regularly been attending. All right, and I'll pause here. Is there anything that people want to add to the agenda that isn't already on there? Feel free to chime in now, to add it to the any other business section, or to jump in when we hit the appropriate topic. So if there's something somebody wants to tackle right off the top, I'll pause. Okay. We have a couple of lightning talks that are tentatively scheduled for the end of February. So I see Babneet, the OSX native stacks and Java cores. Is that something you're ready to do in the near future?
Hey, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think what Eric suggested was we can convert it into a blog, and then we can briefly cover the blog in this OpenJ9 community call. I think Eric is in this call. We can ask him to provide an update because he was almost complete with, or the peer is almost going to be merged. So Eric, can you give us an update on this?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so this work is almost done. It's currently under review. When it's merged, I'll start working on the blog post and give an update here.
So that is next 2 weeks. Is it possible to give or present the blog in this call? Do you think it's feasible?
Yeah, I think it's feasible, but I don't know if it's going to be merged by that time. There may be some issues that come up. So yeah.
Okay.
I think this is a good plan. We've got an approach to take, and we can follow up next week on if the blog is ready to go and follow up with that discussion then. Similarly, I was going to ask Marius, but I don't see him on the call, so I'll have to follow up with him later to see if he's ready to talk about the JIT server-side caching. Are there other lightning talks people would like to give in the near future? Then let's take a look at the recent user-raised items. So things that have come in since, looks like there's only one that has come in since the last community call. That's how can I make the GC slower? Okay. Looks like we've had some discussion there, and we'll follow up if needed. Are there any other user-raised issues that need some discussion on this call? Okay. We'll jump back to the agenda, and that brings us back to our release roadmap. Pete, do you have an update on the 031 release?
Yeah, so we had 6 items, although I thought I checked earlier today and it was up to 7. Not sure how another item slipped in there.
Definitely at 7. I don't know which is the new one here.
Oh, okay. It's just because I added the PR, I think, for there's an issue in here and there's a PR created, and so I added the PR to the milestone.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we could go through them quickly, the OpenSSL to the latest version, that's just our reminder to check. The AIX issue seems to be a test issue on the OpenJDK side. And
I saw some, before we leave that one, I saw some changes to that AIX test coming from upstream. So maybe that got resolved by itself.
well, the person that we're talking to would have submitted a fix upstream. So it may not have been by itself. It may have been the person who works for, who we have to work on AIX issues at OpenJDK.
I just saw changes specific to AIX for that test coming from upstream, so that's I'm
So if
hopeful.
we don't, last time the person working on, we had two of them, and this person already resolved the other one upstream, and then created a PR for us, so we could fix it in JDK 7 or JDK 18. So I'm gonna wait a little bit and see if he posts an update in our issue, and
Okay.
get him to do the same thing. And if I don't see anything from him the next couple of days, then I'll poke him.
Okay, so it sounds like this one will not block our release. It's, understood and agreed with the upstream to be a test issue.
Right. The next one seems like something we could move forward because it's an incubator feature. It's a problem on Mac. As I recall, Cheng submitted something to the mailing list and they were going to make a change. And hopefully that change helps us. It wasn't entirely clear to me.
So it sounds like they are going to make a change, but I'm not sure what that does for us.
Well, the function was returning true, and so I think it was hard to tell the difference between a library that was loaded and a library that wasn't loaded because it would always return true. So they're going to change the return value so we can tell the difference. I'm assuming that'll help us fix the problem. But I don't know if it needs to be fixed for this release, considering it's an incubator feature. I guess if we see them put a fix in OpenJDK, we could put it into our extensions.
I believe they're past their lockdown date on this, so I don't.
They are
I would be
past the lockdown, but I mean, if they put something in the headstream, we could still put that into our extensions.
Yeah, what I was going to say was I don't think they will make such a change for 18, and so it seems reasonable for us to decide that this does not block our 18 release.
Okay, let's just move it forward.
I guess the next one is the DAA load test.
Yeah, so the last update I saw is that we don't have a fix, but we have a workaround, and the workaround's being tested, and hopefully there'll be a PR with the workaround open soon.
Actually, I'll talk to that one a bit, Pete. So this particular issue is related to the use of method handles in the reflection code. The problem is refreshingly reproducible, and we actually do have it down to we have it down to a single method, and we've got it down to just inlining a particular target in that method. But there's nothing obviously wrong with that. So I know that Nazim had proposed disabling inlining of that target. I'm not really comfortable at this point with that workaround because we don't really have a good handle on what the problem actually is. So it may resolve the problem, but I don't know why. So I'd like to get a better understanding of that. So I'm going to get a couple more eyes on the code today to see if we can get to make a bit more progress on this one. But yeah, so where it stands right now is it is reproducible. We have logs for it, but at the moment there's nothing obviously wrong with what we're seeing. So need to figure out what our next step on this one is from a diagnostic point of view.
Okay, so that sounds like that's still blocking our release. That looks like it's the long pull at this point
Unfortunately,
so
yes.
far on the list. All right.
So the next one, we have a fix that is under review and being tested. So I should get in the next couple of days. And
How
then
risky is the fix?
um, didn't seem too bad. We're not doing the right thing with a domain combiner. And so when the domain combiner is being used, there's a context missing. And so the code expects to be able to reach into the context and find something, and it's not there. So we'd already made similar changes some time ago. And I think we're just making the change in a different place.
And this only affects people running with the security manager.
I'm not sure about that. I would think so, but I'm not 100% sure. Jason, do you know more about that? Or do you have any comments on this one?
This one is inside of access controller. Basically, domain controller is one for area, very little usage. This one exposes, first of all, missing basically when we work in a stack, and in the past, we never experienced at the second frame. There is a second frame, and that's only an individual protection domain instead of array. And so that's the problem never experienced before. And this PR already addressed it. And another one is like there are two different API do protection, do domain combiner. That one, that's two kind of different implementation from the one last time I fixed, and the fix just keep existing behavior and just add the new cases. So I think it seems reasonable safe, I would say. And
do you think?
I think it's not strictly related to security manager, because this is technically all the domain combiners, the stuff is related to the security manager, but this could be invoked without the security manager enabled. That's from past my observation.
It sounds like this is a pretty corner case of a corner case, though.
Yes, very, very rare case, and definitely no test code ever run into that code. This was right.
I'm not sure it is a corner case of a corner case. I think there's certain things that just aren't going to work unless we fix this. And just because...
Sorry. And the two API, those was accessed, but the fix might put there inside of that chicken stack. Basically, we put the different data structure from the get current context. And the first one is array, and we always thought it's array, so we will get the first item of that array, and it worked since this API, since this test case. This test case, because there is a second frame, so we're looking for the second frame, still assuming it's array, but actually from, well, even I implemented it, but from the comments, I can read that's not an array according to initial design. It's a individual protection domain. So when they try, and in this case it's null, and then when they try to get a first element of array, let's throw a null pointer exception. Even it's not null, it's still a getting problem because it's not array. We always current code always assuming it's array. So this code just never gonna work if there's a second frame as this test case, unless you see different. Peter.
No, I agree. There's something broken if we don't fix this.
It sounds like it needs a fix as well. What's the remaining two?
Well, the last one is the PR for the one we were just talking about, and the file channel large gathering right. It seems like it's trying to do a file channel write to a file, and it's using some temporary direct memory buffers, and it's running out of it's running into a limit. We have a limit set for how many buffers you can allocate, and it's hitting that limit. And I'm not sure why. It kind of seemed like the buffers should be temporarily used and then discarded and the memory reclaimed and shouldn't affect the limit. Toby, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this one any further.
Yeah, so not much further since my last output. I think what we're just simply hitting the limit on how much memory we can reserve on the machine. For heap buffers, when we want to write it out, the API is going to try to allocate an off-heap buffer so we can have a stable base to write the memory out. And so we end up using twice as much memory for heap buffers. The test itself is allocating 1.5 gigs of memory for heap buffers and 1.5 for off heap. So at a certain point, we start to hit the memory limit for the machine. And I believe that's the problem here. We're just running out of memory.
I don't think it's hitting the machine limit. I think it's hitting programmatic limit. Depending on your XMX, it sets a limit for how many direct byte buffers you can allocate, unless you want to change it on the command line. And the test is running with a fixed XMX of 4 gig, I think. And somehow we're hitting this direct buffer artificial limit. I think it warrants more investigation. I'm not sure it's necessarily a machine problem or.
Okay, well, given that we have the other issue is still a blocker, we can definitely keep investigating this. Toby, is there someone that you can get to look at this sort of as their top priority to get this unblocked at the same time as the other blocker issue?
I'll see if I can spend some more time on it this week.
So that's our list of items.
So I could give an update on what's happened. We did do an M1 build, but it didn't get published. And by the time we were ready to publish it, it didn't seem worth publishing anymore because more fixes had gone in. So we did an M2 build and published that. Now, in my opinion, we still need to do either an M3 or a release candidate build to make sure everything still looks good after we get all the final fixes. And I think whether we call it M3 or a release candidate will depend on the timing. If we still have some time before the final release, we could call it M3. But if we have very little time remaining, I think we're going to call it a release candidate build. And then if things look good, we'll rename that build to be the release itself and just rebuild without doing a lot of testing. Same thing we did for the last release.
So if I'm looking at our timeline, OpenJDK is going to GA on March 22.
I think they've already produced their final build.
Likely.
They have a date in their schedule for doing a final release candidate, and on that date they added a new tag, but they didn't make any changes.
So I think we have the last of the things we're going to get from Stream there. But their GA is going to go out on the 22nd, assuming this is correct.
Yep.
And we kind of have 3 weeks and at least 7 issues to resolve here. Do we believe that we will be able to get those resolved with enough time to do an RC1 before that release date?
So the RC1 would be if we're short on time, rather than just tagging. We get the fixes released and we do some initial testing, rather than just tagging that and calling it the release. I want to do a release candidate 1, go through full builds, internal to IBM, make sure everything looks good, and then we would tag for the release and respin the builds with the release tag. So the RC1 would be a more last minute thing, whereas if we have a couple of weeks remaining, we could do it M3 instead, publish the M3 build, wait the final weeks until we have to put out the release, and then tag the release and put it out. So either way, we're going to do another pre-release build. Just depending on timing, we'll either call it M3 or we'll call it release candidate 1.
Yeah, I understand that part of it. I'm concerned about the completion of the 6 or 7 items we have in our list. Do we believe that we're going to get those closed out within that? Hesitate to say 3 weeks, but within that 3-week time frame.
I think we're down to 2 really. There's a test issue that, okay, the test would pass, but we know it's a test issue. There's the blocker on the JIT team that Daryl talked about, where we have a workaround, but we don't like the workaround, so we want more investigation. But I'm hoping, if nothing else, we could go with the workaround after a little more time has gone by.
Sorry, from what I heard from Daryl there, the workaround is not really a workaround because we don't understand it. It may just shift the timing or
I think
things
it's
just enough.
Speculative at this point. I haven't actually talked to Nazim about that particular workaround, but from what I understand of it, it's speculative at this point. It's preventing the thing that we know that we need to do that causes the problem. It just prevents inlining of this one method, but we don't understand why. So I'd like to understand why before committing to that as the workaround.
So basically, we don't know and we need more time, so we can't answer the question now. But I think there's only 2 things, right? We've got the failed to log in as subject. We've got a PR. We're testing it. We think that's going to get in the next couple of days. So it's the JIT blocker and the large gathering right that needs more investigation. I think we just need to revisit next week and see where we're at.
Okay.
And next week is still in advance of the 14th, where we'd like to start building the final release.
Agreed. Yep. Just looking at the notes here then. Marius, did you get a chance to sniff test the startup of x86 with the reflection changes?
Yes, I did, and there is a 2% performance delta. So according to the instructions I got from Nazim, so I used some JDK reflect use direct method handle equal false, and that one improves liberty startup by 2%. Guessing that 2% is the overhead. Direct method handle.
All right. Thanks for doing that. Guess we'll have to decide whether that's something that we need to work on addressing directly, or if there's some other of the method handle work that's going to help fix that.
So I have a hard stop in 2 minutes, and I think other IBM people do as well. We've been asked to attend another meeting. Maybe we could pick up 032 in the next call.
That works for me as well then. So why don't we call it here? Thanks everybody for the discussion this week. We'll pick things up again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Bye.